And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. It is a Tuesday morning. We are 24 hours after the announcement from Rassie Erasmus with a very, very rotated side. We had such a cool live show yesterday, chatting about the side, chatting about what it means, and chatting about what is the future of the Springbok side and kind of where things stand based on the team announcement yesterday. And for me, what was quite fun after of the show is that we've then posted obviously a lot of clips of Rassie Erasmus. The explanations have come out. He's kind of given everybody an update, and the response has been quite interesting. And I think generally the response to the team has been very good. But it's also been interesting to sort of see what some of the comments have been. And a lot of people talking about the fact that have we essentially almost given up on the Rugby Championship and said, well, we can't win it, and therefore we're going to try and rotate, build squad depth, and try and find different type of outcomes from the tournament itself because of how things have gone. You know, we thought that we'd be here at least sort of two wins. You know, we thought we'd be sitting at the moment, 2 wins out of 3 potentially, with an opportunity to try and go almost sort of back to the top of the log with a win this weekend. And that is not the case. We're actually sitting stone dead last on the log. And it's not a good place to be in. But having said that, it is a very close log. We are last on the log. Sorry, actually, it was second. I think our points difference is, I think we actually second on virtue of, I think we're actually almost exactly tied. Well, actually, we're on 5 points. And New Zealand on 10 points. So, whilst after 3 games we are tied last, we can go tied first this weekend if things were to really, really go our way. And we also need other results to go away. For example, Argentina beat Australia, which could very well happen. And it's probably the best rugby championship, arguably, we've ever had. I don't think we've ever had a rugby championship that is so close, separated by so little, after 3 games. We are halfway through the tournament, and first and third and fourth are separated by 5 points, are separated by a bonus points wins margin. Argentina go and win by a bonus point this weekend. South Africa go win by a bonus point and deny Australia and New Zealand. In fact, there's actually a scenario where all 4 teams could be on the same amount of points after 4 games. That is genuinely a possibility. It means if Argentina were to get a bonus point against Australia, but Australia were to finish within 7, they'd both go to 10. If the Box were to really pitch up and win the bonus point and deny the All Blacks a bonus point, all 4 teams would be on 10 points. So we are looking at the best rugby championship, arguably ever. Now, before I get into the comments, please do consider donating towards, we're trying to get more of these lights over here as part of one of the campaigns. But if you do donate, you go into the Rassie's Coaches Corner. We had lots of people jumping in yesterday. It was really, really cool to see. So a big shout out to all those guys who did send super chats. If you'd like to become a member, you get a cool little animation with your name in the back of a Bok jersey, which pops up on screen. And all these donations really, really do help us enhance our coverage, give you guys more, work on things like the platform that we've got in the background that some of you guys might see. We've kind of soft launched it and going to be really ramping it up. We're going to have a URC prediction league alternation series. We're working on trying to get some partners involved for some big prizes with these leagues. And you guys, obviously, as Forever Sports subscribers, get the early run-in and get to really see what's going on. So big shout out to everybody that did donate yesterday, that did contribute and send super chats and became members. So big shout out to you guys. If you'd like to send a super chat, it's all in the comments, same as the members link. It is the pinned comment over there. You will feature in Rassie's Coach's Corner if you send a super chat. If you join the members club, we are trying to build our members, and you will then go to the top left there. We actually do a bit of a members countdown, really, a goal, because we're hitting our subscriber goals nicely, by the way. So big shout out to you guys who did subscribe yesterday, because we have gone well past 94,000. In fact, we have gone past 94,100, which means that the goal for this week, which is to get to 95,000, is looking pretty good. Then we're in the final stretch to get to 100,000, and as mentioned yesterday, become potentially the first ever South African rugby YouTubers to get there. Let's go through some of the comments before we sort of really get into it, shall we? So Mike says, thanks for the content. I said it yesterday, but I think the stream had ended. I love joining the live show. Also, Albert says, it's pretty obvious Rassie was forced to change his plans. Annette says, well, we at the bottom, why not just work and focus on what we set out to do and work towards 2027? World Cup. Craig Morgan said, missed that powerful ball carrier. Jasper going to be a big power game with him going back 100%. And Alpha Lingen says, we need to win New Zealand in New Zealand with a bonus point and pray Australia beat New Zealand at least once. I think it could happen, to be fair. I think that's not quite likely, but I think it's a strong possibility that Australia beat the All Blacks at home. Explorers Guild says, Marnie on the bench says one of two things. One, Box expect to be chasing the game in the last 20, so they're rolling the dice on an attacking fly. Or two, worse, they think he can close out a tight lead. Well, I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think you've got to put him in the situations at the end of the day. Marnie Liebach is incredibly important to how we want to play. You know, Tony Brown loves working with Marnie and says that Marnie's the right type of player for what we want to try and do. He's the perfect kind of fly half for that. Where does he kind of come short at the moment? Well, it's kind of finding those options in tight games, seeing out a game. Now, unfortunately, you're never going to get better with that if you don't get put in positions to try and work on it. So I love the fact that they've not gone with the in case emergency break glass option with Andre Pollard, who's really good at backing it up and potentially coming in and kind of saving the day. They've very much gone and said, right, we're going to bring Marnie Liebach on later on. He's going to see this match out. What can he do? Can he chase a match, for example? If we're leading, can he tactically play the right moves and the right decisions in front of him to see us through the game? So I think it's a really, really clever selection. And I'm looking forward to it. Jan says, you're the most negative headings on this podcast. Well, it's not a podcast for a start. I don't even feel like watching. Well, welcome to the world of YouTube, where we're asking a question. You see that massive thing called a question mark? If you've watched the channel and you've actually been involved and you've actually ever seen media, what we actually base a lot of our titles on is what every people are saying in our comments. And we're basically responding to suggestions. So that big thing, it's called a question mark. Look it up. That's what we're discussing. Because that's what a lot of people have been saying in the comments. Not like Steve just decide, you know what? I think this is what's happening on. It's actually responding to what people are saying. So welcome to the channel, if you are new. Mark says, I think you're right, Albert. We're feeding that. Morning, De Klerk says, we can beat the All Blacks. My worry is Argentina. And fair enough. Fair enough. That Argentinian side is proper. It really is. You know, that's why we don't have an easy game in this rugby championship. What is really playing into our favor is the fact that we are not playing Argentina in Argentina. We're playing on neutral ground. And we've got a really good record at Twickenham. So that is essentially almost like a second home game for us, to be honest. It really works out in our favor. There are going to be more Box supporters in Twickenham than there are Argentina supporters when we play that game. And that's the really exciting part when it comes to that game. Is that also that's the last game of the season. So our rugby championship kind of hinges on this weekend. If you can get a win this weekend, we've got a big chance. I think we've got a big chance. I think we can beat Argentina twice because I think that down in Durban, we should be able to get a result. And I think at Twickenham, we will have a home advantage. And I think that Australia, again, could beat New Zealand. We might need favours like that, for example. I mean, at the end of the day, if we go and win the next 3 games, it might not even be enough to win the rugby championship, depending on other results. But if we win this weekend, Australia beat New Zealand, we beat Argentina, all of a sudden, we could actually go to first in the log and go into the Twickenham game in control of the rugby championship. And somebody made a good point, yes, saying that basically it's not done yet. You know, it's so close that it's not done yet. So Sif Max says, sacrifice, we lost with the inverted commas best team of 100 and Vili last week. So there's no sacrifice here. We are building for the future, which is critical. Well, that is the whole thing. And what I really like about what Rassie Erasmus said yesterday is he said, we back our players, but we need these players to experience high-pressure environments. You know, so you want to be able to say to Ethan Hooker, right, well, here, this doesn't get any better than this. Your first ever Box start against the All Blacks in New Zealand. Go and show me what you can do. You know, you can't hide in these kind of games. I mean, a lot of people are saying that, you know, we're having a go at Edel van der Merwe, saying, well, try scoring record is not that impressive because it was against Italy and Georgia and Wales. I mean, I don't know how many more teams you have to score against before you kind of say maybe he's actually a half-decent player. I think you know, he would have been playing this weekend if he were fit, to be perfectly honest. I think he would have started in that number 14 jersey, but unfortunately has that injury. But now it's a huge opportunity for Ethan Hooker to take his opportunity, to take his chance, and to go and play against the number one ranked team in the world and show that he's good enough and show that he can do a job and that he's not scared to get involved. He's not scared to try and get a result here. And Mike says, Arsenal are looking so dangerous. They defend so well for 8 minutes at the end. Unbelievable. Annette says, look, my money is on the Box and Pumas to win this weekend. To think we will have a double header against New Zealand women Box and men, spoil for choice, but we know what will happen. Patrick saying, watching from Algeria, win or lose, I back the Boykies and Rassie. I always keep long-term objectives in mind, i.e. be ready to win 2027 World Cup. Well, there's no doubt that this is a big World Cup building match. You know, there's no doubt about it. That is a huge aspect to this weekend. We are looking at a backline with one player who is over the age of 35 and just two players, including Kobus Reinach, who's over the age of 30. You know, 4 players this weekend are below the age of 30 and will be below the age of 30. 3 players will be below the age of 30 come the next World Cup in that backline. Actually, no, it is 4 players because you've got Sasha, who's 23, Damon Willemse, who is 27, Apelifas, who's 27, Kanan Moody is 22, and Ethan Hooker is 22. So it's an incredibly young backline, for example. And there's a lot of unknowns about this. I think that's also a big thing. I think Scott Robertson, for example, would have, after he went home after that press conference where he didn't realize that actually Rassie Erasmus was naming the side. And he would have been sitting there last night going, interesting. How do we plan for this? You know, now they're gonna have to go dig up footage, for example, of Damien Willemse playing 12 for the Stormers to kind of understand how he plays. Now they're gonna have to go do a lot of analysis on what Ethan Hooker's been doing for the Sharks and stuff like that. So we've definitely thrown a lot of unknowns into the mix by naming this side, and I think that is a very positive thing. We become less predictable. We become less analyzable, and I think what we saw last week was a lot of some of the stuff we did was well analyzed by New Zealand. I think they towed the line. I'm very interested to see what the feedback to the referees will be with regards to offside lines, kind of where the line is and how to sort of deal with these things. Because that's the big thing. They nullify a lot of what we try to do, which is fine. And I mean, they've done their homework and they did very well, which is great. But now you get to ask the questions, you get feedback about what you can and can't do. And now you can go into this weekend knowing and having the clarity regarding that, and then you play to within those parameters to try and push those limits. Because that's the whole idea. We're always trying to push those limits. Christian says, I think Rassie is like the mad scientist who's finally losing his marbles. Hopefully he doesn't create Frankenstein. And Dylan, one of our members, says, watching the backline will be like watching Transformers. They can all play more than one position. Well, shout out to you, Dylan, who's one of our Fair Sports members. You can see he's got a little bit of a badge next to his name, and his name's in green. Please do consider becoming a member. It is the pinned comment. And we've got lots of cool stuff for our members, including some of the exclusive training clips and training videos that we've got for our members only, and everything. All the sort of big content we make often goes to our members first. Mark Smith says, I guarantee we score in the opening 5 minutes this weekend. Rassie is going for a full onslaught. Big call. Big call. DD says, Mark should have been relegated to the bench to add impact later. Jan-Hendrik Wessels should have started. Well, interesting, you know, Malcolm Marks very much took responsibility yesterday in the press conference and said that he needs to be better and he needs to take more ownership over the lineouts, because, you know, he said at the end of the day they analyzed him well, but he's got to be more on it. Dylan with the super chat, man's a member and bringing the super chat. Shout out Dylan. Say, morning Stevie P, turn on the lights, turn on the lights. Yeah, we've got to add, I mean, ironic for South Africa to be fundraising for lights when we don't have electricity. Thankfully, I've got solar. But yeah, we want to get some more stuff into the studio. I've got lots of cool ideas, and we're actually building a lot of new things to come. So yeah, your guys' support means absolutely everything as we kind of go through this new journey of new platforms, new looks, the likes of that. We've really changed a lot this year. I'm sure you guys have noticed from a studio perspective. Obviously, we did the green screen vibe last year. Which somebody said looked cheap, and I was like, do you know how much money we spent on green screens and lights and the whole thing to do it? Not the point. But big shout out to you, Dylan, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. And appreciate the fact you're a member as well. Albert saying, Rassie picked a backline that has never been tested on defensive structure. Limdani said, I would rather we lose with this young team against the All Blacks and build them for Rugby World Cup 2027. And it says, wheels in the backline in our favour. 100, I'm still on the fence with no even in the tight 5. It is strange, isn't it, not seeing the stalwart that is Eben Etzebeth in that tight 5. However, there will be a time after Eben, and we've got to see that time. What I think is quite interesting, and I'm surprised we didn't take Kobus Visa, because he is obviously our natural replacement at 4. Salman Murat, they tried, didn't really work, kind of not really take his opportunity. Kobus Visa could have started the number 4 jersey, but they've gone with Lewis, and I don't think anybody really thought about that kind of concept, and the fact that Lua Diago could be an option at 4, because he's never really played there. He's been pretty out and out 5. But maybe as he's obviously getting into his career and stuff like that, maybe 4 is where he could make a difference. You know, I think he is got the physical attributes, obviously, to be a bit of an enforcer, inverted commas. He's a big man. He gets over the advantage line. You know, it'll be interesting to see, for example, you've now got a Ruan Okia who can get up and chase those lines, something that Eben does, which not a lot of number 4 locks do, to be perfectly honest. So what'll be interesting is to see they've basically obviously decided with regards to the roles that everybody needs to the role that everybody needs to do and to tick off and the likes of that they can actually do that within a Lua Diaga and Ruan Okia lock combination. So I think that's quite an interesting part of it. I genuinely do. I think that it's going to be very cool to sort of see how they balance the different things they do. And I think that we're going to see a case of different people doing different roles to what maybe other people do in the same type of position, you know. So I think that we are going to see the likes of a Ruan Okia and a Lua Diaga maybe splitting the load differently to what you would see if it's an Eben Etzebeth and a Lua Diaga. And that for me is really, really cool. And I think very, very positive, in all honesty. So yeah, I'm really, really excited as to how that sort of part is going to look. Just in case anybody wants to see, that's what happens when you become a member. And as you can see there, Dylan with the super chat, jumping into the coach's corner over there. If you'd like to feature in the coach's corner, please do consider sending a super chat. And if you'd like to have your name on the screen there, like we saw over the weekend with Nadine Fix, then please do become a member with the pinned comment on the chat. Some of the other comments over here. Alex jumped in the chat saying, if you look back to the tests played against the All Blacks in 2021, the 100th test, we played a more conservative game and we lost. The next weekend, we played them again with a more expansive game and won. Derek says, how's Money a great call? No, Steve, because he's a great player. He's attacking fly half who takes risks, and as a result, there's always that element of risk. People called Finn Russell a maverick for years and years and years. David McKenzie's been in and out, and people have gone after David McKenzie. Romain Intermac was also somebody who people questioned a lot. Sam Prendergast is going through a similar thing. Attacking nature fly-halves who play close to the game line and really sort of on the edge have the possibility of making mistakes. But at the end of the day, because they play on the edge, there's those moments of brilliance. You know, Alton Young is exactly the same thing. And I think as South Africans, we've got to be a lot better at backing young attacking fly halves. We always talk about the fact that we want attacking fly halves. We love it when they do cool things. When they make mistakes, we go after them, we chastise them, and we ring them down. And that is a problem. You've got to take the good with the bad. Yes, obviously they need to learn from their mistakes, and that's where Finn Russell, for example, is arguably one of the best fly-halves, if not the best fly-half in World Rugby at the moment, because he understands a little bit more when to take the risk, when not to take the risk. But even he's still through an intercept in the British and Irish Lions series, because when you're on the edge, your errors get compounded, but your risks also get compounded. So, you know, Mani Liebach, for example, threw the intercept pass to Joseph Tuali, which is a brilliant read and phenomenally athletic. The more you watch it, I don't know if there's a number 13 in the world that would have actually, first of all, made the read and had the athletic ability to have gotten there that quickly. He's a tremendous athlete. he misses that. He misreads that just slightly and doesn't take that. We ran into the corner, we win that game. Those are the margins of error, and again, that's what you get with attacking fly. We saw with Elton Yankee as well. I mean, he came on and he led comebacks in New Zealand. I think it was actually in Wellington, where he changed the game and he played right on the gain line. But as a result, when you play on the gain line, your mistakes can get compounded because you take those risks. High risk, high reward. There's a reason that saying exists, and minor league backs like that. And in fairness, even the kicking pong, he's actually played really well. It'll be interesting to see how he kicks this weekend, given the fact he's not got the rhino ball, which he's been putting over for free. But I still back the selection 100%. He brings so much to the table. He's got the best skills of all our player house. He's the best pass of the ball by a country mile. I mean, he's got a 40 meter pass. It's bloody impressive, actually. And he can do it whilst running at pretty much full speed. Christian says, I don't understand the concern over Mooney's defense at 13. He's a monster in that channel for the Bulls on defense, even when he's playing wing. Yeah, I'm not concerned about his defense from a tackling perspective. I think where he's been struggling in the last few games is positioning. And if you run into him, he made a couple of big tackles on the weekend. Physicality is not an issue. It's not like he's not prepared to make a tackle. His issue becomes the positioning to be in the right position to make the tackle. I think that's where he struggled in the last few games. And I am a bit worried about it. I'm a bit nervous of him at 13 because I think obviously he has to run the defense. And again, to try and make sure that he has to run the defense, it means he has to really be on top of things. But it's a big opportunity for him to show that he can do that. Colin Donaldson, I predict a big victory in Wellington. Adrian says, Eamon or Eskom could replace Andre or Libok for a 6-2 split later in this week. I don't put it past Rassie to make a last-minute change later in the week to surprise the All Blacks. Yeah, so we were saying this yesterday. He's yet to do it, but he's threatened to do it, says Rassie. He's threatened to change his team later on the week, depending on what the All Blacks go with. We haven't seen it yet. As you say, it could be very easy to drop him an Andre Esterhuizen out of the side and put in a Marco van Staden if you want to go with the two planks, which actually what I did in my predicted side. It's easy to go with a second lock. You can bring on a Franco Moss onto the bench. You can bring an Eben Etzebeth back into the mix. I wouldn't mind Eben Etzebeth getting a bit of time. I think he becomes very important for Argentina now as well. But it can be tweaked quite quickly to give it a whole new complexion. Alex Lamim says, the All Blacks didn't play as well as they could have. They beat us playing block rugby. Maybe we can beat them using some aspects of All Black rugby. Win scrums, be a nuisance at the breakdown. I think we need to be a much better breakdown, to be honest. I think that's a big thing for us this weekend. And it's been a big work on for a while that we've got to fix the breakdown. And I think Jasper Wiese will help with that regard in terms of having dominant ball carriers. Because that's also a big thing as well. Is if you're getting past I can't remember who was I think it was who was talking about it. I think it was Eddie Jones, but they're talking about getting over the gain line is incredibly important for ball retention, because as soon as you, and it makes sense, because if you've got a line, I don't really have I need like a little like a whiteboard or something. Steve can become the coach corner. Basically, the whole concept is if you've got a line and you're falling in front of the line, for these players, it's easy to move forward onto the ball. Or even if it's parallel, it's easier right there to get onto the ball, disrupt the ruck. As soon as that line is broken, these players are having to retreat a yard or two. That takes a half a second or a second, and you can secure the ball. So gain line advantage is incredibly important on making sure that you basically are forcing the defensive line to retreat rather than come onto the ruck and come onto the ball. So that's where the likes of Jasper Wiese is going to be big this weekend, because he gets over the advantage line, especially in close sort of quarters. So you want people who can run around corners, get over the advantage line, quick recycle, give it to the backs nice and quickly, and get that clean ball that we're talking about. Sometimes when you don't get that gain advantage, you struggle to break down because you're not you're having to get your timing absolutely spot on. Where we have been very good at is our dominant tackles, for example. Now, again, for the opposite reason, a dominant tackle is huge because it stops all the momentum. It drives the attacking side back. And again, now they're retreating. They're having to take a few steps back whilst you're coming onto the ball. And I think that, especially in the second half, Kwagga Smith, Marnus van der Merwe, even Arke Snyman to a certain degree, all very good over the ball. We had Hendrik Wessels as well. And I think that we're going to see a very interesting breakdown thread between Marnus and Kwagga, because I think they'll probably patrol different sides of the field and look to get over the ball. Marnus van der Merwe was within the top 10 most turnovers at club level last season across all the major leagues. So he's a really, really good jackler. And I'm really excited to see how he goes this weekend. I just really hope he gets on relatively early, in like a 60th minute, for example. Simon says, people complain when the team is too old, then they complain when it's younger. How can you go for a third World Cup if you don't bring in younger players 2 years before the tournament? Very good point being made. And I think we're all pretty aligned in the comments here, to be fair. Varda says, Box need to get wise to All Blacks tactics at line out. Plenty of encroaching going on just before the throw. Yeah, I mentioned that. And especially when we had that free kick, it was almost actually pushing and shoving. And there'll definitely be that going into the feedback to World Rugby to say, what's going on here? You've got this gap's got to be maintained. But that's what happens, and I think the All Blacks do it very well. And you might not be able to do 2 games in a row, but there's so many instances where teams do one thing in a specific match and it changes the complexion of the match. Italy, remember when they didn't commit to rucks, and therefore there was no offside line, and they almost beat England. And that was a once-off occasion where they just exploited a law. They saw a loophole. They exploited the entire match. England didn't know what to do, and Italy were within 2 or 3 points of beating England, which would have been massive for them. You're thinking of the Damien Willems to scrum. There's always opportunity. And so, for example, the All Blacks got it perfectly right this weekend. But then there might be a bit of analysis, and they might say, but actually, aren't they not infringing? And then now the referees will be briefed to be more aware of that. So that's going to be an interesting aspect this weekend, how that kind of changes and kind of maybe what the conversations we're going to have with the referee with regards to the lines and the likes of that, and kind of what we're going to try and point out for them to sort of monitor. So it's going to be an interesting part of the game this weekend. And I think what we didn't do particularly well over the last weekend, you didn't adapt to the referee. And that's not to say the referee's making the wrong decisions, but you've got to adapt to the way he is refereeing the game. I think you could have made a couple of other decisions, but we also didn't play well. I mean, I don't think that if you change the referee, we suddenly win that game. I don't think it's as easy. It's not a zero-sum game. But I think we didn't adapt particularly well. And the whole part of, I think, being with the Echo paper is learning how to adapt to the way referees are performing. And we need to be better, especially as a coaching staff, is to basically kind of be able to identify what they're doing, where they're towing the line, how we can exploit it, and how we need to be communicating that we believe that they're exploiting it, and is this legal? And even if you ask the question, and you say, sir, they're going to this in the line, is that allowed? And therefore, and that question, and this is why being a captain is so nuanced, because that question puts something into the referee's mind. Because yes, they might say, yeah, they can, but now all of a sudden he's watching, and he's vigilant, and he's saying, okay, I'll check that. And that's why that referee communication all the time is so important, because you've got to be able to ask the right questions, to prompt them looking at the right things, to try and see if you can raise valid issues that you believe you are a victim of. Alex says, Stephen, on the point about Marcus, I assume you mean Marnus, do you feel that this team maybe needs more fetches? I know Marcus has been starting and can play that role, but it seems like the Box are short on fetches. So I think yes. I mean, I think we are missing 1 or 2. I don't think it's as bad as I think a lot of people do make it. I think we really miss Dwayne. We really miss Stephen Kitsoff. We would start a match with Stephen Kitsoff as a fetching option, Dwayne Vermeulen as a fetching option, and if Malcolm Marx started, you had Malcolm Marx as a fetching option as well. So you would start a game with 3 fetchers. We don't have a loose head who's I mean, look, Box and Chair can get over the ball, but he's not a fetcher. Like Stephen Kitsoff was a phenomenal fetcher. We don't have an 8th man who's a fetcher, and I think we were just so lucky to have those very unique players who are just so multi-skilled. I don't think Stephen Kitsoff ever got the plaudits he got for his fetching ability and how important that was. And that was the thing. You'd have a Stephen Kitsoff, Malcolm Marx, and a Dwayne Vermeulen to start, and then you'd bring on a Kwagga Smith, who is phenomenal at the breakdown. I think that Arcus Neyman's a pretty good player. And I think that's something that Jasper Wiese will bring to the table. I think he's very much worked on his fetching ability. I think he's had to, but obviously working with Dwayne Vermeulen is a big help. Because if you do have a couple of those extra players who can get over the ball and understand it a bit better, that does help. And I think that Matsui Manus van der Merwe can bring a point of difference. I think that's what he's got ahead of someone like a Bongi Mnambi, for example. Even a Jan Vestas, I think his ability over the ball does give him a bit of a unique selling point. A little USP if we'll start bringing a bit of a corporate chat to the chat. Eric says, Hobbies is a very good fetcher, also need to be in the mix, and he combines with Nokia in the lineouts. Antti says, keep the same team. Keep the team the same. So I just started Estes and Archie and Volko. Don't want to leave it to the bench if experiments go wrong. Avina said, good morning. Avina said good morning earlier saying, agree, Stevie. There is, that's where Sia is so good. The communication to sway ref's mind instead of arguing. Saying Steven Kitshoff and Mal Herbert is seriously missed. Yeah, like, I mean, I think Francois Herbert is a big miss with regards to the defensive point and what he does in the defense from a communication point of view. He's always been a very good player with regards to organizing the defense and his defensive awareness. And again, those are aspects that people don't necessarily pick up. You look at a player and you think, right, Vance Herbert, what's his job? His job is to scrum and make some tackles. And they don't see how important he is with regards to the way he reads the game, the way that he organizes the defense. And those parts are the small things that you suddenly lose. You might be able to bring someone who's as good as a scrummager, but you lose something there. Similarly, for example, Eminence is so good under the high ball and so good at charging down scrum offs. That's something he prides himself on. Somebody like an Arcus Neyman who's so good in the offload. Everyone has almost a sort of unique intricacies, really, in this box squad that kind of separates them from other people. And Marlins, I think, will be his fetching ability. Christian says, Jesse spoke to the ref like he was barking orders at his backline. He needs to work on that. Sia is really good in how he talks to the refs. But in fairness, again, you talk about the fact that Jesse Kriel is maybe not great at talking to the refs, but that's why it's so important for him to get that experience, to understand how to do it, to work on that. I mean, that's something that Sia even said he had to really work hard on, that he wasn't good enough in his early days of his captaincy at speaking to the ref. Now he's a veteran. I mean, he's captain of the box, one of the all-time most capped Springbok captains, and will potentially get to the 100 club as well. So I think that's a great skill to have, and that's where I think we've been quite clever with using different players as captains, because they have to develop that ability to speak to the ref and understand how to speak to the ref. Matt says, brilliant team. For me, the one to watch this weekend is Sash. Brilliant off the bench appearance last weekend. Well, he's got a big role to play this weekend, the Sash Fami Gomazulu. And if he rocks up and pitches up, then we could have a good time. But needs to get off to a solid start. I think he needs to get a lot of confidence early on into the game. We are going to start closing up there, people. It's been a nice morning show. We did a little breakfast show, which is a lot of fun. Kaka says, Rassie is cooking. This is Vision 2027. The traditionalists will disagree. Let Rassie cook. Agreed. People, I'm actually going to the SC20 auction later. And the reason I'm telling you that is I've got a lot of cricket stuff being done. And I know a lot of you guys, we're all sports fans, South African sports fans. So I'm going to drop my link to my personal channel, the Stevie P channel. And I'd appreciate a bit of love over there. A lot of you guys are already over there. Going through a bit of a revamp at the moment, and going to be doing some very fun live streams in the next couple of weeks, where we don't necessarily talk about news, we don't necessarily talk about the nitty-gritties, we just have a bit of fun. But I'm going off to the S20 auction later, going to be doing a bit of a vlog on it, which is going to be a lot of fun. So if you guys are interested, please head over to the Stevie P channel, drop a little subscribe there, and get to see what I do on a day-to-day basis as well. Last couple of comments, and then we're going to call it for the day. Peter says, the All Blacks have a serious problem at 10. Once Barrett is gone, there's no new talent coming through. And Eric says, traditionalists got as many World Cups and British National Line series titles. Now let's see if Tony Touch Rugby can get us any titles next 5 years. Yeah, well, there we go. As Eric says, Pro is so bad with the series, but create World Rugby losing in record scores. Yeah, well, we already won the series. So as far as I'm concerned, the last match did not happen. But People, thank you very much. And it says, thanks, Steve. Enjoy your day. I'm off to watch what Supersport has to offer today. Cricket will be in order, then varsity netball. Love the work, Annette. Love the work. Enjoy the watching. Please feel free to go follow me on YouTube as well as Instagram, where I'm going to be doing some live stuff from the auction, which is going to be a lot of fun. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Probably do a lunchtime show, maybe another breakfast show. Probably a lunchtime show tomorrow. Let's say at about 1 o'clock. Let's regroup, rechat, and get us really psyched for the weekend ahead. Smash like on the way out, people. Subscribe to the channel as well. And we'll see you tomorrow.